G'day, and welcome to the library. Now, my inquiries to date have led me to speak to many Australian veterans who have been exposed to jet fuel that contain benzene, such as JP8, and a range of other materials, which I'll show you listed in this document, and I will leave a link below as well. Many Australian veterans were exposed to chemicals on RAAF bases, such as aviation fuel and range fuel, paint strippers and solvents, as well as asbestos, even icing inhibitors used and mixed inside the fuel. Then there's firefighting foam, like PFAS. All these numerous chemicals cause cancers, blood cancers, endocrine cancers, up to leukemia, diverticulitis, also cancers such as pancreatic cancer, testicular cancer, and liver cancer. Now, once you leave the military and you find yourself bedridden with illness, you can contact the Department of Veteran Affairs and put in an application for a claim, compensation, if you believe your illnesses were caused whilst you were serving on base. Now, I've heard from many veterans that they have had a lot of difficulties in negotiating with the Department of Veteran Affairs.
I don't see it.
James, after you left the Army, you made a claim to the Department of Veterans Affairs for PTSD and chronic adjustment disorder. What was that process like?
When I was leaving the Army, I put in some claims to DVA through an advocacy group at the RSL. I put in a claim for a bad back, for bad knees, a bad shoulder. And I thought while I was at it, considering that afternoon I'd thrown a phone across the room at one of my soldiers, I should put in for the fact that I was having a little bit of problem managing my temper. After all that, it took about a year to hear back. By the time I'd heard back, the doctor just went, "Oh, sorry mate, there's not a lot I can do." That claim was rejected. It's still on my to-do list 3 years later to go back and revisit that. But I find the entire process of dealing with DVA is very overwhelming, and I can't do it. I get my partner to talk to DVA on my behalf. And I think the fact that there's advocacy groups is great, but surely that's intrinsic of some kind of problem where a veteran can't talk directly to the literal Department of Veteran Affairs without having an absolute terrible time. I could talk to 10 different people and get 10 different incorrect answers.
Jackie Lambie, you made a claim to DVA too.
From day one, I had Veterans Affairs all over the top of me like a bitch, and there's no other way to put it, and that made my life miserable, and I don't know what else to say about it. My claims are still going 17 years later, but my last claim, and I haven't been very successful with mine. I've only had very small payments. I've found them, they did everything from video surveillance on me to review. I had to take them through the AAT. I tried myself for a year to fill out the forms. I tried to see advocates down in Tasmania, which was very difficult. And then in the end, I ended up having to pay a lawyer to do that. That still took me a 7-year turnaround before I went to the AAT itself, where basically said to Veterans Affairs, you will pay her, you will help her.
One such DVA client is former leading aircraftman Terence McLernon. Terence McLernon served in the Royal Australian Air Force from 1966 to 1975. He started off in my hometown, in Bullsbrook and Pearce, at the Pearce RAAF base. Terence McLernon also worked on the Macchi jet in the 481st Squadron at Williamstown. It was the 77th Squadron that he worked on the Mirage jet. Terence McLernon worked on the Sabre jets at both Wagga and Williamstown. He helped train Indonesians, brought jets out in the paddocks, washed them down with range fuel and jet fuel, inhaling all the toxic fumes, not being given proper PPE, having it touch the skin. Terence McLernon also painted hydraulic lines for all kinds of toxic paint, cleaned it with range fuel, jet fuel. He also worked on the Mirages Cyrano Radar section. Terence McLernon was medically discharged for medical conditions. He was classified as unfit to carry on in his trade. He has since tried to reach out and claim compensation for such illnesses. Here is the following list of Terence McLernon's ailments. I had his permission to post this, and I'll leave a link to the file for all to see. Terence McLernon has probably one of the worst records of medical conditions. He's one of the most exposed to jet fuels out of all the victims I've come across. It's a shocking tale. I believe he should be getting his worth. Terence McLernon also consumed contaminated oysters, as did many other Australian veterans from Soldiers Point. Mr. McLernon declined a personal interview out of fears of backlash from the DVA. He wishes for the files to speak for themselves. He would comment on the fact that the DVA he considers is morally and financially bankrupt. Mr. McLernon considers his medical list a license to comment. He worked on the Sabre, the Macchi, the Vampire, the Mirage, as well as working with icing inhibitors, that are highly toxic, solvents, and firefighting foam. Whilst based at RAAF Base Pearce in Perth, Terence McLernon also travelled to our satellite base situated in Gingin as a ground crew. Terence McLernon assisted the pilot training there from its very conception. He also said they'd travelled out there by bus, where they'd go for training that was held there each day. He said that the groundwater there was classified as contaminated, being exposed to jet fumes and firefighting foams on a daily basis. Terence acquired the help of an assisting advocate to help him with his Department of Veteran Affairs claims. Here showing will be a bunch of pictures from the claims that he did show me and allowed me to photograph. Some conclusions I'm starting to arrive at. I'm starting to think that maybe it's a combination of both PFAS and jet fuels and solvents that cause all these numbers of illnesses. Blood cancers and endocrine cancers. Seems to be a massive link to this. In the final moments with speaking with Terence, he mentioned that, under his considered opinion, he finds that diverticulitis seems to be a first sign. I'm curious to find out how many people agree. This is Jason Harrison. Thank you for attending the library. I will leave a whole bunch of links attached at the bottom of the video and on the library page where I post this video. If you have issues, like Terence's, if you've been exposed to jet fuel or firefighting foam, please email me. My email is on the website, www.veteransexposedtobenzene.com. That is the home of the library. Must stop the suffering of veterans.